Thank you, everyone. I'm sure some more will trickle in. We're getting towards the end of the day here. So appreciate joining this last panel. So as we talked about, we're going to be talking about product models, product definitions, and really get into, as we do on this first day, nuts and bolts of how these APIs work, how they're put together. And we're also, because we have the word AI in our title, we're going to have some exciting talk about demand dynamics and how they integrate with, or drive some of the demand for APIs on Ethernet, as well as the additional products we're going to be talking about. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce the guests who are going to give a more fuller description of what we're talking about today, starting with James Grant from Connectbase. And then next is Michał Łączyński. We'll see how I did there, from Amartus, Solutions Architect. Followed by Wenyu Shen, NTD, Senior Manager and Principal Architect within NTT. And then Maciej Simm from Enxoo, Head of Innovation Pillar. And then Abhi, Director of Product Management from Salesforce. Take a seat, guys. Great, so we have a big panel, a lot of brain power on this stage right now, and a nice mix of different participants within the ecosystem, service providers, et cetera. So I think it'd be helpful to have everyone introduce themselves and talk specifically about your role in this project, which is the product models, product LSO payload. And I'm going to start out with you, Michał, and maybe you can just give us an overview of kind of what this project is, and then also tell us your role and your company and yourself as well.
Okay, so hello everyone. Good to be here. My name is Michał Łączyński. I'm with Amartus, where we, within our solution, implement both the AI use cases and the product standards. But I am also today here in my MEF hats of being the LSO community developer manager and the LSO co-chair. And to set up the stage, what we mean by product payloads. And we've talked all the day today about the APIs, but the APIs are the functional part. They need to trade something, and this something is products or services. So the product models we usually define it by the standard, which is very, very long. It's time-consuming stuff, and people tend to think that it's not worth investing time in that. So as a MEF, we have started a project called Payload Factory, which I'm leading and contributing to. Is where we are starting to being agile, yes. So we define the products based on some one or two contributors who have the business case of using and having that product, and we can develop a draft of that standard in literally days, sometimes weeks, depending on the maturity of the input, and make available in our LSO marketplace for the broader feedback usage, so that it's very quick to market.
Great, thanks. And we'll get into some of the elements of the impacts, but we'll continue on. If you want to go next, Wenyu, and mention your role within this project specifically, and your role overall.
Sure. So my name is Wenyu Shen. I'm with NTT Communications. So in my company, I'm mainly in charge of the production of some new service, including IoT, AI, edge compute, and so on. And from the production perspective, we are investigating the adoption of LSO APIs to the last 1 mile L2 service and L3 service and so on. But in addition, in the MEF, we are also leading some incubation project. As probably you might be aware that we have some boost there and introducing the adoption of the LSO payload to some new service like edge compute and so on. And also this year we expanded the incubation scope, not only limited on the edge compute, but also to cover some other area, including the 5G connection and the cloud fabric as well. So from my perspective, I can see that LSO payload can be starting from the L2 and L3 network, but expanding dramatically to other new domain, including edge, 5G, and so on.
Okay, and then we'll move along. Maciej?
In Enxoo, we are a boutique systems integrator specializing on the BSS implementations, and many projects that we do together with service providers are about quoting automation. And if you want to do the quoting automation, typically an important piece of the project is to really define your products. So our expertise really come from these different experiences we have with various service providers. And typically, like when we begin such project to build and standardize the product catalog, we start asking the question, how the product look like? And what I find in MEF and in the projects that MEF are doing around the product models, perhaps this is an unnecessary steps because like some of those products are really common. And if we come up with, let's say, standardized way to exchange the information about the products, then modeling them in the quoting automation catalogs can also be simpler. So that's why we also contribute to some of the MEF projects on that front.
Great, and then Abhi?
Hi, I'm Abhi, sir. Thanks for having me in this panel. With Salesforce in the communications industry, part of the product management group. So we work with quite a few standards bodies, TM Forum and MEF now and a few others. And as we interact with our customers and what we hear from them is again about standardization. And standardization is not just in the APIs perspective, but in the product model perspective, how we can make it easy and make so that any transformation project or let's say any new product launch does not become an IT project. That's the whole idea. That's what the drives us. So as one of in my role and capacity, I work very closely with the standard organization and to see how we can drive the standardization work within our company as both APIs as products that we are launching, as well as in the product definitions, right? For SD-WAN, that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit more. And we feel very fortunate that we have been able to work with Michał, who has led this product payload factory, and Daniel, and this is our very initial baby step that we've started working with MEF.
Great, and then close us out. James, kind of introduce yourself and your role.
Hi, yeah, my name is James Grant. I'm the SVP of Global Marketplace at Connectbase. One of my roles is to work with our customers, our buyers and sellers, and MEF to implement the MEF solutions into our platform. We are a global ecosystem for buying and selling connectivity, and we're trying to make it easier for our buyers and sellers to interact with each other. We have some buyers who are on platform, and we have some buyers who are off platform, and equally we have sellers who are on platform and off platform. And we look to use things like our MEF adapter within the system to make sure that our buyers and sellers can communicate in a MEF compliant way. And as such, I work with the MEF team to implement the new functionality, features, and payloads.
Great. Well, that's a good intro. And so, as I understand it, listen to these discussions. Obviously, the MEF has a very important role. These LSO APIs have a really important role in Ethernet, but the growing products and what is going to expand going forward is sort of what these folks are thinking about and defining that properly. And so maybe each of you have a product category that you focused on a little more than others. And so I'd be just interested in kind of what are the demand dynamics of the products I'll name, and what are the demand for end use case for APIs. And maybe I'll start with you, Abhi. Around SD-WAN, you mentioned that's what you do. So as we're doing this work, what is kind of the demand for some standardization in that? And what are some of the overall dynamics within the SD-WAN industry that they sort of jump out, from as far as it relates to kind of this API utilization?
Sure. So we have seen our customers, the CSPs, focus a lot on cloud connectivity, and because many enterprises, more and more enterprises are shifting their workloads to the cloud. They are building cloud-based applications, and in fact, in a recent survey that was just launched by TM Forum, it tells us that about 57% of the respondents, they feel that cloud connectivity would be one of the major drivers for promoting any NaaS-based services. So we are seeing that traction in the market, and we see that also there is a global like market and reach for SD-WAN, which is the projected revenues from 3.4 billion in 2022 to about 13.7 in 2027. So with these work that we have, with these market data points and the work which we have done for our customers, we felt the need to standardize this, because we feel that there's going to be a big uptake on this. And that's the reason, even though our customers have been using Communications Cloud for rolling out SDN product, so we felt that it is important that we standardize it, so that every project we don't have to become it as a project delivery. And that was one of our main driver, the market dynamics and what we are hearing from the customer to double click on this work.
And how is that going? I mean, this seems like one of the hardest things to standardize. Has there been some traction, and is it led by a couple of service providers who are interested in the standardization, or is it pretty early work on the SD-WAN front?
Yes, for sure. I mean, we see SD-WAN as one of the very common enterprise product that is being used to roll out to roll out. And there is also another far side of thing. In the last panel, I mentioned something on going where the puck is going to be, not where the puck is, because CSPs think that, okay, when you are helping their customers for launching this cloud connectivity, there are other services that can sit on top of that. So means that security services becomes a natural bolt-on on top of these connectivity services. So it's those long set of services that we think are going to be taken up. So our job is, from a CRM middle office layer, is to make it easy for the CSP so that they can serve their customers better. So that's where we come in from. Right?
That's great. And then maybe I'll go to Maciej on internet and broadband. So that connects a lot with what we talked about with SD-WAN, where a lot of the demand is particularly with both wholesale and enterprise ordering. And I understand that things are a little further along as far as the product models there. Maybe you can give us a status check on how that's going from a product standardization or a product LSO payload development, and any demand dynamics that jump out.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've asked the question, of where is the biggest demand to standardize. I truly believe, that the biggest demand is really where the volume is. And even if you've mentioned, Abhi, the SD-WAN being overlay, right? To run SD-WAN, we need like an underlay. That's where the internet access comes into play. So what happens right now? There is a standardization project within the CBC, Commercial and Business Committee, where together with a few other parties, we sat down together, and we've really taken a look on how internet access is being transacted between the service providers. What came up from this project was really that even though there is like a service payload for the internet access officially published by MEF, we've seen that the way the internet is actually transacted, which is the kind of business interaction. So we try to narrow down the whole service definition to, let's say, a few critical attributes that are being exchanged in the kind of quoting process, and that work is I believe close to being finished. And out of that work, I think Michał and LSO committee will pick it up to really define the payloads. Bitstream access is another interesting story, which really comes from, I believe, what happens in the industry right now, which is the delayering thing. Especially in the domestic wholesale areas. So Bitstream was more like an experimental payload that was proposed by us a few years back, based on the project that we've done in Poland for one of the wholesale operators. And seems, like after some time, it got some interest within the community also. So we'll see how it will go.
And help me, what's bitstream, or how would you define that? That's internet access ordering schema, or how do I think about that?
Well, bitstream access is really a very close to Ether access E-line type of a service where you where typically it's being used on the GPON type of networks, where a wholesale broadband provider enables a stream of bits, like basically an Ethernet connectivity for the retail service provider to be used for the end customer. The retail service provider effectively provides like an internet access, and underlay is from the wholesaler.
Great. I think I'm sitting on this thing. Thank you so much. So I'm going to move the conversation along a little bit, and we'll talk about what's in our title, which is AI demand. And so when we think about AI, it's going to be mentioned in every panel, but what's really happening right now is that the hyperscalers in particular are requiring huge amounts of bandwidth in the form of wavelengths, dark fiber to interconnect their training data centers, new data centers. And as we look forward, that could move along to enterprises, et cetera. So maybe I'll pass it to you, James, to kind of talk about what you're seeing with your customers and different stakeholders as far as specific AI-driven demand elements, and how that might act as a catalyst for some of these API integration requirements.
So rather controversially, rather than asking AI, I decided to ask our customers, what were the key things that were impacting them from the increase in AI. And they, interestingly, were saying that the challenge that they are going to see is not necessarily from the data center to data center model, where there is going to be a big spike in traffic, but it's actually going to be connectivity into the data centers and the impact on the geography of the data centers. So generally, in the requests that we see at the moment, on our ecosystem, if people are connecting to an ecosystem to a data center, they are generally requesting dark fiber or wavelength services. But what we are starting to see is that due to the demand for these services, they're having to relocate or build new data centers where the power is available because of the the demand and the requirement for AI services. We need to find locations, new data centers where there is power, and so we're seeing traditional centers like Dublin and Amsterdam and London are getting largely up to capacity in terms of what they can do at a data center level, and so companies are now looking at the more regional locations. In the UK, I think in the last 2 weeks, there was a big announcement by the government that there's going to be a new AI data center up in a place called Blyth. I've actually got a degree in geography and have lived in the UK for 50 years, and I didn't know where Blyth was. So there's a new challenge that we're going to be looking at in terms of where data centers are located and where the cloud's going to be.
And with that demand, is there an opportunity for MEF and LSO and sort of API ordering to have a bigger role? I guess it's still early in the game, but I would imagine there's some dynamic about those needs when you're connecting those data centers.
So we are seeing an increasing amount of suppliers who are offering automation at the wavelength level. So you were talking about the increase in demand. Historically we've seen automation at 1 gig, and then suddenly people were automating at 10 gigs, which was quite impressive, and suddenly they're automating at 100 gigs. We are seeing the demand for automation at the wavelength and dark fiber level, but to be honest with you, it's not something that we are processing a great deal of on the platform, because the overwhelming demand is still for traditional Ethernet services.
That makes sense. And then, staying on the same topic, when you mentioned you're working on edge compute resources, and obviously with this demand driver, the requirement for compute, bare metal, space and power is huge. I'm curious kind of what you're seeing from a demand dynamic there, and if there's anything about kind of this sudden surge demand that is, again, a catalyst for requirements for APIs and automation within this space?
Yeah, sure. Actually, myself I'm not the standardization guy. I'm from the production side. So many the requirement, the demand for edge compute payload is from the production side. So mainly two motivations. The first of all is that edge compute, we have already developed edge compute service within Japan. But when we want to expand it globally in a large scale, so we don't have the footprint because edge is always associated with the last 1 mile, but we don't have the last 1 mile all over the world. So we have to collaborate with another service provider in different region in order to provide a online automation of the provisioning of the system. So global scale, global expansion of the edge compute is one motivation. And the other is that currently we sell edge service to the customer, but the revenue increase is becomes slow. So we want to increase the revenue by wholesale the service to another service provider rather than directly provide the service to our customer. So in that case, by selling the edge compute service to another service provider might increase our revenue from another aspect. So as I said, two motivations behind. So one is global expansion, the other is wholesale to another service provider in order to increase the revenue. And also that's why we come to the MEF, in order to try to help improve, accelerate the standardization process of the edge compute. So last year we focused on the virtual VM and the bare metal, as you mentioned. But as you know, edge compute always is not only the isolate service inside edge facility. So we need the last 1 mile, we need the cloud fabric, we need to connect the IoT device, whatever, your cell phone, your mobile phone, your PC to the edge, and finally to the cloud. So this year, in the accelerator project, you will see that we expanded the scope to cover the last 1 mile 5G connection and also the multiple cloud connection so that we provide end-to-end service to the customer.
And edge compute and as a product being integrated in kind of the LSO API ordering topology or ordering system, how is that coming along? Are we very early days, or if you have some trials, or kind of where are we in that process?
Yes. The standardization is not ready yet, to be frankly, so that's why we come here. And we do the implementation in the accelerator project, and also we collaborate closely with the MEF standardization process. So in parallel, so do the standardization, do the implementation, and feedback to each other in order to accelerate the whole process.
Okay, and that's helpful. And then Michał, maybe I'll ask you, we just talked about some products. We talked about SD-WAN, internet access, broadband, wavelength, edge compute. What other product categories are either a current focus or should be a focus of this committee or of the step one of integrating into the LSO API ecosystem, which is building product models? What sort of is top of mind from another product perspective?
So before I answer that, I just want to mention that all of these products mentioned right now here are available in the LSO marketplace in the pre-standard release. You can find it them, so they are already there. That's what the product payload factory do. Now, from the point of view of MEF, it's up to you to decide which product payloads are the most important for you. So we have a couple of more. We have the Wavelength, we have the Google Partner Connect product also there. So you can choose and find, but the priorities, it's up to you. We are listening.
Okay, and by you mean the service provider, pretty much everyone in this room, as far as which products you wanted to define. So if I'm thinking, hey, I want product definition, or I want MEF to be involved in cybersecurity, who kind of starts that ball rolling within the kind of product payload definition?
Well, so that starts with the demand. Yes. So anytime we have in any discussions where as MEF we hear about a certain need, then we try to start and talk with the service provider that there's this project, please come contribute, and we as a MEF you can have that product published in a matter of weeks or something like that. Yes, because that's how we want to address the problem with time to market, and let's say a little afraid from or scared from service providers to take the steps, invest the time in standardizing that.
And maybe you could expand on that a little bit. Like when you think about kind of the traditional method of each provider having a bespoke product definition and I guess developing something that is a not standardized but kind of a iterative process. Your approach and doing what you said in weeks versus kind of the long slog that sometimes happens when it comes to standardization.
Yeah. So I would put a couple of layers here. So as Amartus having many integration projects, we see different approaches. Yes. So there are service providers that like to think standard first. And we are also happy with that because that means we already have the product to serve their needs. But they are often also service providers who are very reluctant to go into standardization, I think, because of two reasons. One being just time and money. If there is no standard, they need to provide some time, they need to provide some money, invest in this process, and that's why we have this product payload to get that fast to market. But I also think one of the reasons I've heard from the life is the fear of losing the competitiveness when they share it something broadband. But having many of that already in that project as MEF and as Amartus, I really don't think that's a reason, because analyzing many inputs, generally if you serve the specific domain, specific product, all service providers at the end use the same couple of product vendors. Yes, so it's not the difference about the product model that you provide. It's about how you provide it, your service level, your prices around that, your level of automation. Not exactly the product model. Yes, so the product model is just a way to share the information, and it's sometimes also about the business process. The business process. People try to build the business process into the product model. That's also sometimes making a little troubles to decouple the process from the actual model. But then I think having the product, standard products, makes you available in the whole ecosystem that we are talking about right now. That's the entry point for the automation.
That makes sense. And in this development of APIs, maybe I'll go to you and you. I mean, what role do you see each of the stakeholders playing, and who needs to kind of work harder? And that's the service providers are kind of the key demand drivers, and then there's other folks on this panel, OSS providers, marketplaces, etc. I mean, just kind of curious your perspective of, who do you need more from, and what role do you see folks playing in this process?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, right now, the main effort from the stakeholder is, the buyer and seller. The seller wants to, like I mentioned, wants to resell their service to another service provider, while the buyer wants to buy a service from another service provider in order to expand their footprint, as I mentioned, in the edge computer domain. And also, I think the vendor's role is very important because, without a mature software platform, we cannot, develop a system as quickly as possible in order to meet the rapid requirement change. So that's the main, I see the stakeholder that so far play in this domain. But I want to mention another one is the customer requirement, which is some point that we are over missing. So actually, we need a customer requirement in order to accelerate this process. Like I mentioned in the edge compute, we have the demand for a global service. So that's why we started investigating the collaboration with some other service providers in other regions. So the customer, vendor, buyer side, seller side. I think these four stakeholders should work together in order to, accelerate the whole standardization process. That's my personal point of view.
That's helpful. And so we've blown through the time and just take an extra minute. Let's do like 20 seconds and kind of go around, and we'll continue on the. We'll start with you, Maciej, and what makes you most excited from either demand or an innovation on the API side, and then what do you want to challenge people most to focus on?
Yeah, I was thinking about it, and maybe it will be a little bit of controversial, but no, we are standardizing the products here because our business systems can only deal with standardized information. That's the whole purpose of the work we're doing here. And I believe right now we suddenly have a newest technology that can deal with unstructured world, and that's what is quite exciting for me. To see whether we are really taking the right approach. And if somebody would like to discuss it, I'm happy to take it offline. But that's my point.
Thank you. Abhi?
Very quickly, I think when you talk about the APIs and the payloads, we are talking all this in the realm of NaaS as a service. I think we need to challenge ourselves, not forgetting about the as a service piece. What is the service? How can you make it easy for all the stakeholders and all the job performers, including the marketing and the salesperson who has to roll out these new offers, right? So we have to put that in the fix, and how do we make the journey easier for all of them?
James, want to add something?
Yeah, so what's most exciting for me, it's a very selfish thing, is the fact that we've just added a MEF adapter into the connected world, which means that now there's an extra 270 sellers on the platform who can now interact with buyers in a MEF-compliant way.
And then in the last couple of seconds, do you want to add anything, Michał or Wenyu?
Yeah, so I would say with the same train, so you don't have to be fully packed to jump on. Yeah, so I mean by that, with this payload, we start with the very least information and put that to the public, and then try to use it, and then after we have some consensus of the first drafts and a couple of feedbacks, then we start the whole productization and the whole standardization project. So it's easy to start.
That's great.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize again about the importance of the implementation itself. We talk a lot on the standardization itself, but the market is very fast. So we have to implement while we do the standardization. So I think in the MEF, so we have some accelerator project. I think that's a very good starting point to combine the standardization with the implementation. I think only the collaboration with both two can really accelerate the whole market.
Awesome. Well, thank you. We went a couple minutes over, but we had, as I said, a lot of brains on this stage today. So thank you so much to our panelists, and thank you all for sticking around.